Have you ever wondered about if having a vision really matters? Well, in today's episode, we're going to talk about why a big vision matters for your life, for your business, for everything that you're involved in. Because if you don't have a vision, it's going to be hard to really go anywhere. But hey, guys, this is Philip Sessions. And just remember as you're going through your day that I do help employees and companies with their communication skills in the workplace. And that's what we are all about, helping those here at Speaking Sessions to help you with your workplace communications. But I've got Benny Fisher. He's a Christian husband, a dad, and he's just a little bit behind me with the daughter he has. So he's got the girl dad and the boy dad side of everything. Love seeing the videos he does, but he is also a visionary at Big Fish Roofing, a business growth leader at Contractor Dynamics, and podcast host of the Big Fish Cares podcast. But Benny, I'm excited to have you on. I know we've been trying to get this plan for a while. We're both busy. You've been speaking on stages, but tell people a little bit more about yourself.
That was a great introduction. Well, you want the long version or the short version?
What's up to you?
All right, let's go with 41 years old. I live in Pittsburgh now. I moved here 13 years ago from Canton, Ohio. Had a little rocky road as a career. Growing up, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I always had a lot of ideas, and I always thought the world was a really cool place. And I always kept hearing everybody tell me, wow, you can't do that. Oh, you got to go to do this. You got to do this. There's a lot of rules, regulations. And I wasn't really fond of that. My parents never really made a bunch of money. They always kind of complained a little bit about, never having enough, but always stayed at their job. They were very loyal to their workplace. And I could never figure out like why they just didn't go do something else if they wanted to make money. And so when I was 18 years old, I tried to go to college just because that was the cool thing to do. And all my other friends were doing it, but I hated school. And I lasted about 3 weeks, dropped out of there, saw an ad for a car dealership in the paper that said you can make 100 grand a year. So I signed up for that. I had to pay for my own training, which is like unheard of today, right? Like if, I had to pay $500 to go to car sales training. So I actually invested in myself at the age of 18 because I wanted to be somebody. And, I did good in car sales for being 18 years old, but I wasn't really good at listening to bosses because every time they said something, it didn't feel good to me. I didn't want to go do the things that they told me to do, like how to overcome objections and how to get back in the box and close deals no matter what. Like I really wanted to sell, the way that we sell nowadays with a little bit more empathy and really bit more problem solving. But back then it wasn't the way. And I would get fired just about every, I don't know, 6 months to 8 months, it felt like. And eventually I did off and on car sales for probably 5 or 6 years. And then I went and did mortgages for a year before the mortgage crisis. And then I sold cell phones at Verizon. But then I found a home in the drug world because I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired and got sucked into the drug world. I knew it wasn't the right way to me. I always grew up being a Christian but got away from the Lord and just was I don't know, but found acceptance there, right? Like nobody was firing me. Everybody was like applauding me for what I was doing. And 3 years into that, I got arrested with 2 felonies and I thought my life was over. I was like, wow, I'm never going to have another corporate job ever again. I'm never going to be anybody. My uncle calls me up and he had been a roofer for the last, 20 years or so, living over in Pittsburgh. And he had started his own roofing company finally. And he said, I need some help with sales and marketing. Will you move over here? I'm like, I'll do anything to get out of my current situation. And so I was just happy somebody wanted me to be on their team. And I drove over to Pittsburgh. I had a credit score of like 500. And I think I owed my uncle $1,300. I think he paid off my fines. And so I was at the bottom, right? And this is just in 2010. And so I worked for him for 5 years. And while I was working for him, he wasn't the kind of business. He was kind of more of the old school contractor where he didn't really want to hire and scale a bunch of teams. So about every August or September, I'd have to stop selling roofs because they wouldn't be able to get them all done. Especially the winters here in Pittsburgh are kind of bad. And then I started to listen to this guy on Facebook, Gary V. And he kept talking about branding and marketing and how to get yourself out there. And Facebook was just popping off in like 2011, 12, 13. And a bunch of small businesses that I was involved with at the Chamber of Commerce where I was living said they needed help with their Facebook page. And I'm like, all right, well, I can do that. And so I started tinkering around and then more and more people wanted me to help them with that. So I was kind of doing that on the side. And started a little business called Fisher Marketing LLC to kind of like be able to like run invoices and stuff like that through that. And I was still working at the roofing company, but not really having that much fun anymore. I wasn't allowed to use too much technology. I wasn't allowed to I wasn't allowed to use any of my ideas, right? I was running into those same roadblocks that I had back in my 20s. And my uncle finally got fed up with me and he let me go. He said, "Hey, I think you should go sell roofs for someone else." And that was a turning point, another turning point in my life where I was like, wow, I'm over here in Pittsburgh. And about 2 years after I moved to Pittsburgh, I was able to get my felony expunged. So that was really cool because I didn't have a record before. So I was feeling good about that. So I was able to get a contractor's license. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take everything I learned about selling roofs, mix it with this stuff that I was hearing from Gary Vee about all this marketing, right? And how to build a brand. Take all my sales experience, roofing, marketing, poof it all together, and out popped the Big Fish Contracting Company. Last name's Fisher, not a small guy. And I started with nothing. I think I had $12,000 to my name, and I knocked a few doors. I sold a job, and I sold one of his neighbor's jobs, and I sold a friend of that guy's house. Then I had enough money to run some ads on Facebook. I was doing the social media thing, and I was out selling jobs. And that's kind of and we've just been growing it ever since. There's been some pain and suffering along the way. I never hired people before. I never managed people before. So that was from about year two. That's when I started to hire people. To about year four, I experienced a lot of pain, where I was doing more revenue, we were doing more sales, but we were making way less profit, and I was not having fun. This was not the American dream that I had dreamed about. This is not what they were saying on social media. And that's when I started hitting the books again because I was in so much pain. I was like, wow, I got to learn something. And I hired a consultant, told me to raise my prices up a little bit so that way I could afford to hire some people and then create a really good customer experience, which we call the Big Fish experience. And then I was able to read some books and learn about leadership and then figure out how to get myself out of the sales because I was pretty much doing all the sales. Well, I had some of my team doing some of the ops. I was kind of doing marketing on the fly and then invested in some sales training so I could learn how to teach other people how to sell because I always could sell, but I didn't really know how to translate those skills into other people. So I was able to do that, get myself out of doing sales. And then I became the actual CEO where I was actually running the business, all four departments, still doing the marketing, invested in a program called EOS, have a full-time implementer, comes in, helps me grow a leadership team, helps me make moves, kind of guides me along the way. And a year ago, almost a year ago today, I turned the company over to the president who runs the whole company. I work about 4 to 6 hours a week on the business. And now I have time for other things like podcasting and speaking on stage and going to conferences and events and doing, coaching for Contractor Dynamics, which is a marketing training firm which helps contractors build a brand. So that's my story. I had two kids along the way and loving life now, man. Life is good.
Man, that is an incredible story, and just to kind of, I guess, put the cherry on top there, all the while you were dealing with ADHD, which is pretty impressive as well, because
Oh, yeah, it
we
doesn't go
all,
away.
yeah, yeah, it doesn't go away at all, and you definitely can have squirrel moments quite often.
Yeah, it does help.
So,
And the one thing I ran from was structure, right? I always thought like, wow, I don't feel like I like all the rules and the structure. Well, EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System, I read a book called Rocket Fuel, totally changed my life. I always say read the Bible first. That was the first book that changed my life because that gives you all your values, right? And your passion. And
hmm
then the second book for business was Rocket Fuel. That's the difference between the visionary and the integrator. Because I kept thinking I had to do all the things in my business. And I
mm.
realized I wasn't good about like at most of them. And I couldn't figure out why. And I was always beating myself up. And I would always go home and like just like not feel good about myself. And then that would lead to drinking and doing drugs and like just trying to escape because I was afraid to tell anybody that I needed help.
And that's tough, and I definitely struggle with that myself between the visionary and the integrator, especially with my engineering background. You think I'd be more of that integrator because there's the structure, the processes, all the systems there within the business, but I'm more of that visionary. Yes, I can do that integrator role, but it's like people that are introverts when it goes to speaking. Yes, they may be an extroverted introvert, as people like to say, and they can go out there and speak, but it takes so much energy, and that's how it is for me when I'm the integrator, and I like being that visionary as well. But tell us a little bit more about this visionary, because I've seen this journey and all these things, and they kind of just started stacking up over time. Was this the vision for you behind all of that, or was it just kind of, it just organically happened as one more thing came up that, oh, we can do that, or oh, I can do that, and everything? You just kind of saw that vision and took off after it.
Well, there's the difference between what I call dreaming and then being a visionary with a process, right? Where you can
Mm,
actually manufacture your actual vision and you know what you're doing. So early on in my 20s, and even when I was a kid, when I was 7 years old, I would dream about these things. I had that creative juice, right? And like,
Mm,
and when, again, you only have your parents to go talk to about them. And if your parents have a limited mindset or a fixed mindset, when you tell them something, they're busy working, they're busy trying to survive. They don't really give you a lot of time, right? Your teachers, right? They're instructors, like they don't have time to listen to a kid. And so what would happen is, man, all my ideas, everybody said they were bad, right? Or it felt like that. They said they were bad. So
mm,
then I would always be like conflicted and I'd have all these things going on in my head. So I was always dreaming, but dreams without actions are just hallucinations. And I kept trying a bunch of stuff because it was like kind of like I was like a caged animal that was trying to get out, right? Trying to get out of like whatever shell I was in. But I could never seem to break through because every time something would come up, man, I would just get knocked back down, get knocked back down. But I kept getting back up, kept getting back up. It wasn't really until the last 3 years to where I can visualize something now because I've dealt with my past, right? A lot of people hang on to their past, and if I could go down a rabbit hole right here, so stop me if I go too long. But so you have the past, present, and the future,
mm,
and the most people, their past determines what their present's like. And so, and most people kind of like, if you're somewhat smart and you somewhat like, aren't just a total, doofus, you'll get a little bit better over time on your own merit, right? Without learning too much, without
mm,
investing in yourself, like you'll get a little bit better, but it takes like 80 years, right? And you'll be like, wow, that was a long, hard road. Or you can use your past and you can like look at all the things in your past that you think are bad, right? And then looks like, well, what's the good about that? Like, what's the good about some of the things I struggle with? Like, what came out of that? Like, what's the silver lining? And if you could
mm,
turn that filter instead of having a negative filter about your present life and have a positive filter, then when you start dreaming about your future, instead of dreaming negatively or having a nightmare about your future and then acting like that and then it actually coming true, you can have a positive filter on that future. And then if you start acting like what you're dreaming about in the future, you just start acting like that today with no past holding you back, you can actually live that dream life. And that's what I'm doing today.
mm. Can you give us an example of that? Because I think it's a great thing, but it's definitely hard to go past that conceptual and actually bring it into reality.
So I'll give you a good one. This just happened recently. So remember I mentioned Gary Vee that I started listening to him in about 2012, 2013.
Mhm,
Okay. And I didn't really deliberately understand fully the power of visualizing your future and then actually making it come true. So there was bits and pieces of like, wow, this Gary Vee guy, like, man, like there's something about him, right? There's something about his values. There's something about the way he moves through life. There's something about him. And I always wanted to be around him or in a circle, but he's a big time celebrity influencer. Like, guy like me is never going to meet him. Well, I had the opportunity when I remember I mentioned I found my integrator and I turned the company over to him 2 years ago. He invested into my company 2 years ago and I turned it over to him a year ago to kind of run the day to day. Well, when he invested in my company, he actually bought 25% equity. So he wrote me a big down payment, nice big fat check. And at that same time, 3 months later, Gary Vee was flashing up in my Facebook stories. He's like, NFTs, NFTs, NFTs. And I'm like, what the heck's an NFT? Like, I do not want to go down this rabbit hole because I know once Gary Vee starts talking about it, man, like I will be down the rabbit hole and I won't be able to come back out. But for whatever reason, I went down the rabbit hole, did my 50 hours of research. Oh, there's this NFT project. I took almost every single dollar that man wrote me a check for, and I said, you know what, here, and I invested in this V Friends project, Gary V's project, and I really got myself ingrained into that community. Now, you know, part of that NFT project was there's going to be a conference called VCon every year. Well, in May of 2021, NFT was V Friends was launched. There was going to be a conference in May of 2022. And so in May of 2022 is right around the time that I was passing the baton from my integrator, from me to the integrator, and said, hey, you can run the ship. I'm going to go out and pursue my passion of, going around the country, going to different events, speaking on stage, having a content team follow me around. I kind of wanted to follow that Gary Vee model. Well, when I went to VCon last year and I saw all the cool stuff and all the colors and all the speakers and all that, I mean, it was just like, it's so much cooler than a roofing conference. Let me just tell you that, because that's what I was stuck in like for most of the last couple of years. And when I was there, I was like, wow, how cool would this be to be able to speak on stage at VCon? And I just manifested it. I said, I felt it. I dreamed about it. I felt myself up there on the stage and I felt myself, and I even got to go backstage last year and I ended up running into Gary Vee and we had a little exchange. It was caught on camera. And I've had many conversations with Gary Vee through the opportunity of this project to be able to like do Zoom calls with him, do some one-on-ones, do some group calls with him. And I've really gotten to know him over the last year. And I just said, you know what, that's the goal. And I actually made it a 2-year goal. So I said, oh,
Mm,
by VCon 3, I will be on stage because yeah, I didn't think I had enough, I didn't have enough momentum. I really don't have that much of a following on social media compared to these other influencers that are on stage. But I was like, you know what? I can do enough. I can be persistent enough. I can do the work, right? I can get on enough stages in the roofing conference, get enough content filmed of me, do enough good for the world. I think I can make it happen. That was the goal by year 3. Well, wouldn't you know it? And again, I don't know when this podcast comes out, but VCon is May 17th, May 18th. I just got invited to speak on stage. I got an email last week. I think I sent you the text, right? Because I love what you're
yeah, you
doing with
did.
this. I love what you're doing with the speaking sessions about how you're teaching people how to speak. I never was professionally taught. I just get up here and talk, right? It's probably one of my ADHD superpowers is that I can get so passionate about certain subjects. But yeah, I mean, I dream, and it came true a year early. And then
Man.
there's just been the guy that's running my company, my integrator, his name's Rob Tokay. He was a part-time a fractional accountant for me back when I started Big Fish. And I told him every single year, I'm like, man, it'd be really cool to have you on my team. Really be cool to have you on my team. I need a guy like you because you're the left side of my right brain. And I can't
Mm,
operate without that because I don't know like numbers and accounting that well. Well, he was working for a big $50 million contracting company and he was just doing my books on the side. Was helping some contractors out. But every year
mm,
I was like, man, I need to get you. But I'm just some little fish at the time, right? Doing a
mm.
million, 2, 3 million in revenue. I can't afford a guy to pay a guy 150, 200 grand just to do my bookkeeping and like, run my company. Well, sure as crap, man. Like April of 21, I called him up and said, I read that book, Rocket Fuel. I said, I need you, man. Read this book. You're the integrator. I'm the visionary. Let's go. Let's do it. I'll do whatever deal you need to do to get here. Made it happen. He's on my team. The company's never been better. So I manifested that too back in the day. So there's 2
Man.
examples of how you can manifest something. And I have thousands of examples now because now it's a process. Now I can actually do it. I can do it. Like there's a process.
Mm. Can you give us like maybe a little short snippet, like 1 minute, possibly on what that process kind of looks like? Because I can see that where you have an idea and then you start kind of just trying to take action towards that. Maybe you're
Well,
speaking
yeah.
it out loud, kind of like you did and everything. But can you
Yeah.
give us
So
like a
you
1 minute synopsis?
yeah, so you have to first of all, you have to obviously know who you are.
Mm,
Okay. So first you have to know who you are. That's the first step. You have to know all your strengths and all your weaknesses. Because without that, you're going to be dreaming and hallucinating, like I said before. And then you have to have a little bit of a track record for action, right? Like, and for me, action is one of my superpowers. I'm an activator. So if there's something I'm interested in and excited about, I'm going to figure out the way to go get it. And so once you have, like for me, like once I knew who I was and knew my superpowers and knew what I'm interested in, you have to be still. And then you have to find some still and quiet time. And you also you can't have a lot of clutter going on in your head. And so for most entrepreneurs, if they're doing all the things in their business and they're putting out all the customer fires and putting out all the employee fires and then putting all the fires out at home, they never take time to be still, to meditate, to really manifest and dream about what could be or like what their 10-year outlook looks like or their 3-year outlook. And as soon as you start to dream and you start to understand like who you are and you can start to kind of like just go forward, say, oh, if this happens and this happens, I can do this and I can do that. And you go 3 years out, then you dream it. And then guess what? You wake up from the dream, you put that as your goal, and then you make a plan to go backwards, right? 5 steps, 6 steps, 8 steps. The more steps that you have, the better because you can micro step it out to where,
mm,
oh, wow, I just got to go shake this hand. And then I just got to go get in that room. And then I got to just go do that. And you can make yourself a process. And then you just got to go execute. And if you just start acting like that person from 3 years ago or from whatever you want to be, and you start acting like that person today, you'll get there.
man, I love that. That's so true. And I know I definitely live out a lot of those things as well and really trying to put myself in that place that I'm going to be that person if I start being that person now instead of later on. Be your future
How about
self
this is a
now.
brand new book that just came out. Be
Nice.
your future self now. This tells you the process how to do it way better than I can do it because I'm not a psychologist or a doctor. I'm just one of those real life guys that you can talk to, and like it's not just it's not just another story. Everybody thinks Jesus is like a fictional character in the Bible. Well, you can do the same things. You can be your future.
Mm. Man, I couldn't agree more there. Now, I want to go back a little bit to your the business side of everything. And you talked about this, what a lot of people, especially contractors, would think is a dream life. Like, I don't have to go work 40 plus hours, really probably 60 plus hours a week. I'm not working every weekend. I'm not working holidays. I'm not stuck on top of a roof all the time. I'm literally working like 4 hours a week. And you're not even really working in the business anymore. You're working on the business and you're really just that, like we've been talking about, that visionary. How did you I want to start with, how did you get that buy-in from people to get them to start doing that work? Because obviously, if you're going to stop doing the physical labor, if you will, and the day-to-day thing, somebody else has to pick that up. So how did you first of all start doing that and getting people on board? Because there had to be a lot of communication and delegation and everything there.
Yeah, so obviously, knowing who I am, right? Like I knew like I started delegating all the things I was bad at. Because whatever you're bad at, there's someone else out there that's their superpower. And so when you can first of all identify who you are and what your strengths are and your weaknesses and be real with yourself, then you can start talking to people in your community and like figuring out who what they're good at, right? And by asking good questions, kind of like, me and you are doing right now on a podcast. It's really no different. And then you basically just use your influence to be able to sell them a vision, right? Like you have to have a bigger vision than them. Because if
Mm,
you don't have a bigger vision than your people will leave because again, like it can't fit. It can't all fit. And then you also have to believe in your people, right? And you have to give them the confidence. You have to give them the skills. You have to give them the training. You have to lead them. And leadership's just another fancy word for helping people. And I love helping people. If I help enough people get what they want, I'll get what I want. And really, what I want is just for all my customers to be taken care of, all my employees to be taken care of, and my family to be taken care of. And at the end of the day, then guess what I can do? I can go help the industry that I serve. I can go out and help the world. But like once those basic tenets are taken care of, and then you pay people really well, you inspire them, you have a team that's clicking. This company runs so much better without me in the day to day. I can tell you way better because I used to screw things up. Because again, I would get mad every time I'd hear someone on the phone, like, not answer the phone the right way that I would answer the phone, right? And I'd walk by the hall and be like, no, you should do it like this. Because I was so crazy
mm,
about customer service, right? And then I was so crazy about this and so crazy about this. And I learned I got to let go. I just got to let go and let God, right? Because God will give me
mm.
enough wisdom to then be able to pour into my leadership team. My leadership team pours into the mid-level managers. The mid-level managers pours into the frontline workers, right, that are dealing with the customers. And that's really at the end of the day. And I started at the bottom and I worked my way up. When I say that, I basically just built people from the bottom and gave them the skills. And now every single person in my company, there's not one person that is at my company that it's not in a better position before they got here. Not one single
Mm.
person. Every single person makes more money than they did before. Every single person I think is happier because we do surveys on our employees. Our customers are raving about us. We have a 4.9 Google star rating. We have over 600 5-star reviews, which is unheard of in contracting. Shoot, that's unheard of at a pizza shop. They got 100
Yeah.
customers a day. So that's really all it is building a team, man. Delegate and elevate. And my people will go into a burning building for me, and I would go into a burning building for them. And
Mm.
they know I'm out, talking to people all over town about, hey, come to work for Big Fish, because they want help. My people want some help, man, because we got a lot of customers calling, right? And so it's my job to do that macro level marketing to be able to to be able to build like a recruitment funnel to be able to keep people coming in the door.
Hmm, man, I love that. Delegate to and elevate, and then also let go and let God. There's a lot of people when they have their business, or if maybe they're not a business owner that and they've just been doing the work to be able to pass that work off. Because especially from a corporate perspective, if you're not doing that work, a lot of people think that, oh, I'm going to get looked over, and it's funny because you end up being the person that's better, if you will, and nobody's really better than anybody else, but because you're doing more of that delegation and you're leading that team and everything, and you're able to make more things happen, you're actually able to get paid more because of that. But people think opposite of that. But especially those business owners, yeah, it's your baby. You're getting rid of your baby and you're handing it to somebody else. That's definitely scary. And I know you said you just kind of let it go and let God, but was there anything else you did, or was it just finally one day you're like, I've just got to stop? I mean, how
Well,
was
no, I
that?
mean, lots of I mean, listen, lots of books,
Yeah.
lots of consultants, like surround yourself with really good people. Get yourself into rooms with people that have done it before, ask them questions. I mean, I ask questions nonstop. That's why I had to start a podcast because it's like my outlet. Like I could like when I got out of the day to day, I'm like, hey team, I'm going to start the Big Fish Cares podcast, and I'm just going to go interview a bunch of people. I'm going to go do a bunch of. I work more now than I probably did before, but it's on other things, right? Like I'm helping other contractors all over the country on how to build a brand. Well, guess what I get to learn? I get to learn all the things that they're doing that they're struggling with, that they're winning with. And guess what I'm able to do? I'm able to bring that knowledge back. I'm able to share knowledge with them. We're just sharing knowledge with each other. And because of the internet, and because if you can know how to build relationships, you can do things a lot faster, right? You can either, what's John Maxwell say about, you can only go so far by yourself, but if you go together, you can go faster. I can't, I'm not really good at repeating everything, but
Yeah, I
it's
think
something to
it's
that
if
effect.
you go faster alone, you go further together, something
There
like
you
that.
go. See, yeah,
Yeah.
you're a lot smarter than I am, Philip.
I don't know about that, man. You're definitely in a bigger spot than me. Getting on Gary V's stage, you're delegating all this work and not even having to work necessarily in the business. I know you're still doing a lot of work, doing a lot of other things, helping a lot of people out. But I want to just kind of leave it open for you. If there's one piece of advice that you give to a business owner that's really trying to work on their communication in the workplace to be able to help them
Mm.
get more to working on that business versus in that business, what would you suggest for them?
Well, again, with anything, right? With sales, with employees, right? You're going to always have to resolve conflict. And there's always going to be, people that don't know what to do, right? They're going to come and ask you for help, or there's going to be two employees that are not getting along, or there's going to be things that happen. So some things you see and some things you don't see, right? And some things it's the things that you don't see that are really hard to pick up on. So, you really have to be good at reading people. You have to understand like what their strengths are. You have to understand how they communicate with each other, and then you have to be that mediator. Whether it's a customer issue where you're trying to help a customer solve a problem, between your customer and one of your workers, or two workers, or any type of situation, you have to be like almost like an FBI CIA guy, like a negotiator, like a hostage negotiator, like a some you got to have influence to be able to get people to get along. Because what I see too much is when people have low emotional intelligence, especially the leader, we're quick to fire. We're quick to just say, "Oh, I'll just do it myself." Well, that's only going to do is just keep you working by yourself for the rest of your life. So, there's one book that I read that really helped me with this, and it's called "The Five Dysfunctions of a Team." And it's by Patrick Lencioni, and it's a great book. It's like 4 hours. It's in a fable, so it's really tells a story through a bunch of people on the leadership team, and you can kind of see, you can kind of get this like third party viewpoint of like what's happening with these 5 or 6 people on this leadership team. And then if you just assign those names of the people in your company that you're closest to, you can kind of see like what may be happening on that, like the boss, what may be happening that the boss doesn't always see. And you have to be able to like resolve some of this stuff, because if you don't, that's how you're going to lead people. And then you're going to train them on how to do that with people that come up underneath them. And if you can train leaders on how to be leaders, I always tell myself, I'm not a true leader until I've created a leader who's created another leader.
Mm,
Think about that for a second. I'm going to say it again. You got to create a leader who creates a leader. It's not good enough just to go one level down. Like if you come to work for me, Philip, and I train you and I get you part of the system, and I get you embedded in the culture, and then I get you, and then you take somebody else and then make them a leader that's better than you and even better than me. Guess what? That's leadership. Because now you have there's a process. There's a
mhm.
process on how you can scale and how you can leave a legacy that'll be there long after you're dead and gone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I think that's a great definition of how to be a true leader. Oftentimes, we just think about literally leading that team and not creating other leaders, and that's where I think we're kind of stuck right now, especially here in the states. Is that we don't have a lot of leaders, and if we do have leaders, it's more by title than anything, and we have to really lead people and influence them, and really using those the emotional intelligence like you talked about, to be able to help influence those people to make decisions really on their own, because that's a whole we can go down another rabbit hole. That's the thing too, that we don't allow people to make decisions, which is part of leadership. You have to let them fail sometimes and help correct them,
A
and
lot of
don't.
times.
Yeah, 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 not
A
just
lot of
sometimes. Yeah,
times.
definitely
Listen,
a
a lot
lot
of
of times.
times. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
but too
blood, sweat, and
often.
tears.
Mhm. And it's hard, especially if you're the business owner and it's your baby, that's even harder. But as a leader, hey, I'm just gonna get my A team guy, or I'm gonna get my A player in. I just get them to take care of it. And now you've got these B players that turn into C or D players because they never get any experience. They never get that true exposure and hit those hard points. And now your team can't grow because all you have is one A player who's overworked, and you got a bunch of D players getting paid about the same as that A player. And then now that A player is, well, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm good. They're not going to fire me. There's all sorts of things that go into that. So you definitely need to lead and get other people and let them fail and help build them back up as they do fail, and let them know that it's okay. Because that's another thing. I think a lot of employees, they're afraid of failing, so they really don't try, and they could be better, but they stay maybe at that B or C level because they don't want to fail and get ridiculed or punished for that. But if you let them know it's okay to fail, as long as you're intentionally trying to do good, then, then go ahead, try it. Let's see what happens, kind of thing. Let's try and break the system, if you will, by trying something new versus, oh, let's just stay in this little box. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that, and the other thing too is if you don't watch out, those A players will get completely burnt out and they'll end up leaving you anyway because eventually, you can't do it all by yourself. So like it's one thing to be the owner and fly off here and go sit there, but like eventually that your next top guy, he's gonna burn out if you don't create a system. Right now we're trying to get my integrator. I told him, I said, you need to be able to take a month off. Like take 4 weeks off, no internet, no phone, take your wife, take your kids, go somewhere. I don't care what you do. Stay at home in the basement. I don't care. Test the business. Test
Yeah.
it. Because and that we just got to keep doing that, right? I mean, like we give people vacation time. I mean, we want people to take time off, and you need everybody to be able to step up, right? And elevate. And then
Hmm.
you always have to be growing. If you're not growing, you're dying. And I know people think that that's a cliche, but you can't just grow it big enough to just like get what you want. Because like, sure, I could be retired right now. If according to my mom, I could be retired. I make just as much as my mother does, probably a lot more. At 41 years old, I shouldn't have to work anymore. And I
Hmm.
don't go to work because of the money anymore. It's because I need to create systems and I need to create abundance. So that way there's people coming in and there's people that can step up. And you got to keep that vision so big because if that vision just like stops after you get what you want, guess what? They'll start leaving. They'll start disappearing. And guess what? You have to go back in the box. So
Yep.
at the end of the day, and I've seen it happen so many times, and it's like, and I never even thought like that because I'm thinking like I want a thriving organization. I'm trying to create the organization that was never created for me, and that's why I ended up having to start my own organization. Like I'd still
Mhm.
be somewhere right now if they would let me keep going.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And that's a lot of people. And a lot of people don't necessarily want to do that entrepreneurship route, but they realize I'm stuck here. I can't do anymore. They won't allow me, and I just say they in general because they're happy where they're at. I don't see that vision. I'm not bought into where the company's trying to go, and so they leave. They go start their own thing. So if you want to keep employee retention, you need to have that vision bigger. You need to have buy-in from them, and that buy-in comes from that bigger vision, letting them know where they can grow and develop within the company. Because if it's just you're going to be this same spot the rest of your life, who really wants to stay there? And there are people, there are great people. I would say my wife's probably one of them, that she just, let me just do my job, let me go home, and she's a great worker, but she doesn't care to grow. And you do have people like that, but that's not everybody. So you got to be
Yeah.
able to, and that's where emotional intelligence comes back in. You got to be able to know who wants what, and what makes them tick and what makes them thrive and be excited about work.
And when you understand those principles too, you get a lot better at hiring on the front side. So there's a lot of less pain on the backside. So like you start, the more experienced I get at hiring, right, the better we get, the stronger the organization
Hmm.
gets. The first few years were very clunky because you're just grabbing people and you're like, hey, let's go. But now there's more of a process, right? We know what we're looking for. We can ask better questions. We could talk people out of the job just as much as we're going to talk them into the job. And that's really important, right? To be able to,
Mm,
like, I tell people this is not, this is not, this is, we're kind of crazy over here, Big Fish. You know what I mean? Like, we're a little nuts. You know what I mean? And I tell them why we're nuts. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, if a customer calls, like, we go take care of it. If this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do that. Hey, we go walk around smiling. We hug. You all right with
mm,
hugging? And then I go up and give them a hug and see if they even like hesitate for a minute. They hesitate. Well, they might not be a hugger. Guess what? I'm
mm.
looking for huggers, man. We want people with
Yeah.
heart, and it's okay, right? They can always. It's like the difference between Chick-fil-A and McDonald's, right? They're doing the same
Mm,
exact tasks, right? They're
yep.
dropping baskets of fries. They got a window with sandwiches going out. They got cash registers. The only difference is the type of people that they hire.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Night and day difference between those two companies. And yeah, it just depends on what you're trying to go after there. So and it definitely shows through the whole company, and everybody talks about it. And that's a different style company, right? Because it's kind of based on convenience too. So a lot of people still go to McDonald's, convenience, or it's cheap, whatever. They're going for something different than,
Yeah, then they're
I guess, the
complaining when they
quality.
get when they get home and
Yeah.
they don't have their order right, or the ice cream machine was
Mm-hmm.
broken. I mean, you go to the other organization, man, it is spot on, Johnny on the spot. The
Mm-hmm.
line's flowing, but hey,
Mm-hmm.
just hey, I don't want to drive 4 more minutes down the road. But guess what? You're gonna drive 15 minutes back to go get your dollar cheeseburger, because that's what happens. But hey,
Yeah.
it's different levels of emotional intelligence.
Yep, yep. Very true, very true. Well, man, Benny, I appreciate all this information. It's been awesome. I do want to go to our last question here. I'm kind of excited to hear this from you. But if there's one message you could share for the rest of your life, what would that message be?
To forgive people, to love people, and that's the key to like letting go of that past. So in that way
Mm,
you can, have a clear mind in the present so you can create a compelling vision for your future and act like that future self back in the present. And that'll really 10x your life. And you'll live a life more abundantly when you can do that.
mm. Man, I like that. Love people, forgive people, and then live like your future self. And that's awesome for sure. Well, Benny, man, this has been very informative. A lot of people, I think, lack vision. Of course, some of them out there are those integrators, like we talked about. So if you don't have that vision, that's okay. Find that visionary for you. But some people, I think, just lack that vision, especially the business owners within their company, and that's a lot of times why it doesn't grow. So if they want to follow you, this great example of a visionary person, a very caring person, I love the content that you're putting out. Where's the best place for them to follow you at?
You can go to bennyfisher.com. All my socials will be on there. Facebook, I'm Benny Fisher. Instagram, bigfish.benny. Twitter, @FisherBenny. LinkedIn, Benjamin Fisher. The Big Fish Cares podcast. You can go check out some episodes there. Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. So
Awesome. Well, Benny, man, I appreciate you coming on and sharing all its value. It's been awesome.
thanks for having me, Philip.